Track 3. Number 1. Now listen to part of a talk in a biology class.
Well, display behavior in animals is largely tied to survival. Basically, animals use signs and gestures to let other animals know what they need or want. Today, I'd like to discuss some different ways that animals use display behavior to communicate. First of all, animals often exhibit territorial behavior. In nature, animals need to defend the area in which they live, as they depend on it for resources. Let's use crows as an example. I'm sure everyone is familiar with the loud caw-caw sound of crows. Well, they aren't just making noise. In fact, a male crow will produce distinctive cries to make sure every other male in the area knows about its presence. The cries act as a warning. And, if that doesn't work, the crows can puff up their feathers. This makes them look bigger than they are, so they appear more threatening. Then there are the things males do to attract a mate. And the main goal of this is, of course, to eventually reproduce. The male hummingbird, for instance, will position itself in front of a possible mate and then move its head from side to side. This makes its colorful neck feathers more visible to the female, making him more attractive. In addition, the male hummingbird will fly up in the air and dive down over and over again. He does this right in front of the female, hoping to capture her attention.
Using the examples of crows and the male hummingbird, describe two types of animal display behavior.
You may begin to prepare your response after the beep. Please begin speaking after the beep.
Track 4. Number 2. Now listen to part of a talk in a psychology class.
Well, we all know that having self-confidence is important. It affects how we feel and how we see ourselves. And, well, also how other people perceive us. The effects of self-confidence are beneficial in two ways. Being self-confident definitely improves a person's ability to handle life's frustrations. Self-confident people know that they're worthwhile and don't worry so much about their mistakes. They understand that everyone makes mistakes, so they don't let it get them down. Let me tell you about my daughter, who, I'm proud to say, is a very self-confident young lady. She's attending a university, and a little while back she failed an important biology exam. Even though she was quite upset about it, she cheered herself up. She did this by remembering that it was just one test out of hundreds that she would have to take, and that failing one test wasn't the end of the world. Having self-confidence can also lead to personal growth. Confident people are more willing to learn and grow from their mistakes. Eventually, this growth can help them succeed. This applies both at school and later in life in their careers. So going back to my daughter, she realized that she hadn't studied hard enough for her exam, and she wasn't going to make the same mistake twice. So she worked harder when it was time to take the next exam. She studied so much that we barely saw her. And in the end, guess what? Her grade improved significantly.
Using points and examples from the talk, describe 2 effects of self-confidence.
You may begin to prepare your response after the beep. Please begin speaking after the beep.
Track 5. Number 1. Now listen to part of a talk in a biology class.
As you know, fire is one of the biggest dangers faced by trees and plants. Plants have evolved 2 mechanisms that protect them against fire. First, some trees have a thick, self-pruning trunk that helps protect against fire. If a trunk is thick, it can survive fires since only its outside will burn during a fire. And if a trunk is self-pruning, it means that the tree sheds its own limbs and branches, so it won't have branches close to the ground. This makes the tree less likely to catch fire. The California redwood is an example of a tree with these features. When forest fires hit the area, well, the trees don't often catch fire because they self-prune. And if the trees do in fact catch fire, their thick trunks ensure that they only blacken on the outside, but rarely burn completely through. Plant shoots have also adapted to deal with fire. Lots of trees have shoots that are buried deep under the bark. Shoots are the parts of the tree that regenerate. The first new parts, and having them deep within the bark is an advantage if a fire occurs. They're later able to sprout from the damaged parts of a tree. Take the eucalyptus tree, for example. That's the tree koalas always eat. Well, that tree can burn until only the roots are left. But the shoots are able to take hold in the leftover roots, and the tree can grow again.
Using points and examples from the talk, describe 2 ways plants are protected against fires.
You may begin to prepare your response after the beep. Please begin speaking after the beep.
Track 7. Number 2. Now, listen to part of a talk in an economics class.
Now, everyone knows that it's no easy thing to break into a new market or industry. No matter what you do, there will always be risks and things to take into consideration. Certain factors can definitely hinder or even prevent any success at all. Today, we are going to take a closer look at a couple of these entry barriers. Let's start with capital. In other words, money that is used to start up a business. It takes money to make money, you know. For example, I've got a friend who recently opened a bag factory, and before she did anything else, she needed to get enough capital to rent a large space and purchase all sorts of equipment, like industrial-sized sewing machines. She also had to buy large amounts of material, like leather. Another thing to consider is control of resources. What happens is, a small segment of the industry has control over the materials other manufacturers need. So, before my friend started her bag factory, she had to look into who controlled the materials in her industry. And it turned out that most of the high-quality leather producers were unavailable to her. This was because they already had exclusive contracts with well-known brands in the handbag industry. In other words, most of the leather producers wouldn't sell their leather to other bag makers. So it took a really long time before my friend found a supplier.
Using points and examples from the talk, describe 2 types of entry barriers.
You may begin to prepare your response after the beep. Please begin speaking after the beep.
Track 9. Number 3. Now listen to part of a talk in a biology class.
Out in the wild, every day is a struggle for survival. Animals not only have to find food, but they've also got to protect themselves from danger. So, what do? Well, it's pretty amazing, actually. They, have protective adaptations that help them survive. Basically, these are physical traits that developed as the animals evolved to fit their environment. A major advantage that some animals have is camouflage. It, helps them blend in with their surroundings so that predators can't see them. If you've ever seen a stick insect, for instance, I'd be surprised. It's possibly one of the most effectively camouflaged creatures out there. They live mostly in forests and grasslands where there are lots of trees. They're green or brown and mostly long and thin, so they look just like twigs and are really hard to notice, especially when they aren't moving. Their appearance fools predators very effectively, so most of them will pass by the insect without even noticing it. Some animals have armor on their bodies to protect themselves. Armor is usually made up of hard materials like bone or mineral deposits and acts as a sort of shield against predator attacks. Consider tortoises as an example. These animals would be extremely vulnerable without their armor. A tortoise is a very slow creature, so it can't exactly run away. And it isn't really capable of fighting off an aggressor. So what does it do? When it's threatened, it pulls itself into its shell for safety. The shell, or armor, is hard enough to stop predators from biting through.
Using points and examples from the talk, Describe 2 ways animals have adapted to protect themselves.
You may begin to prepare your response after the beep. Please begin speaking after the beep.
Track 11. Number 4. Now, listen to part of a talk in an economics class.
Knowing the value of a dollar is important. When you shop, you definitely want to get your money's worth, and you don't want to feel as though you're being overcharged. That's why it's essential to be aware of the variety of pricing strategies retailers use to sell their products. Now, with premium pricing, retailers sell their products at higher than average prices. They do this mostly to make us believe we're buying something exceptional. The goal is to maximize profits for certain items that people are willing to spend extra money on. Take designer shoes, for instance. Why do people spend so much money to own them? Is it because they are of the best quality, or is it because the price tag has led them to believe that they are? Buyers tend to assume that if they pay a lot for something, it's going to be good. And this assumption is understandable. After all, we've all heard the expression that you get what you pay for, right? Then there's a sneaky technique known as psychological pricing, which, as you might guess, is designed to exploit the average consumer's mentality. Here, retailers sell items for just a little bit less, a trivial discount that will not affect profits, yet customers are made to believe they're getting the most out of their money, that they're getting a real bargain. For example, let's say you see a pair of shoes priced at, say, $99. What's the point? Why not $100? It's only a 1% difference in price. Hardly anything at all. Well, even though the price is only slightly less than $100, most customers will feel that it's pretty cheap, and they're going to be more likely to buy the shoes even if they don't need them.
Using points and examples from the talk, describe 2 pricing strategies.
You may begin to prepare your response after the beep. Please begin speaking after the beep.
Track 13. Number 1. Now listen to part of a talk in a biology class.
Tears are a lot more complicated than they seem. There's more to them than just water, you know. They're filled with all sorts of vitamins and nutrients that are necessary to keep our eyes healthy. Today, we are going to focus on 2 types of tears. Did you know there's more than one kind? Let's start with reflex tears. They are a physiological response that results from irritation. They're shed to help protect your eyes from harsh substances like dust, smoke, or even the gas that is released when onions are chopped. What happens is, let's say a piece of dust gets in your eye. The nerves in your eye send a message to your brain, and your brain sends hormones down to your eyelids. These hormones produce tears that basically wash your eye out and get rid of the piece of dust. So this kind of tears functions like a cleaning system that keeps our eyes healthy. The other type is called psychic tears. These tears are shed because of an emotional response to something, such as the feeling of sadness at the loss of a loved one. Or, for instance, I'm sure many of us have started crying during a sad movie at some point. But did you know that the effect can be positive? In fact, tears can actually improve your mood because the tears help your body get rid of stress hormones and other toxins. In addition to the emotional causes, psychic tears also occur when we experience physical pain due to an injury. The tears relieve the pain because they contain a natural painkiller. So you see, this is why crying can actually make you feel better sometimes.
Using points and examples from the talk, describe 2 types of tears.
You may begin to prepare your response after the beep. Please begin speaking after the beep.
Track 15. Number 2. Now listen to part of a talk in a psychology class.
We all have different beliefs and personalities, so it's natural that interpersonal conflicts sometimes arise. But when 2 parties cannot resolve an issue by themselves, it's a good idea to seek help from an independent third party. Now, let's look at a couple of ways that a third party can help people resolve conflicts. Okay, so the first of these is mediation. In mediation, the primary role of mediators is to promote dialogue between the people who have the dispute. They determine when each person can talk, make sure the discussion does not become too emotional, and try to build trust between the 2 people. Things like that. So mediators are active participants in the negotiation. And the benefit? Mediators can improve the relationship and help each party to better understand the other's views. Now, the ultimate goal of mediation is for the 2 parties to come to a decision that both agree with. Thus, if an agreement is reached, the mediation ends and everyone is satisfied. There's also a second common method for settling disputes, and this is called arbitration. Arbitration is a bit different. In fact, it's a little more like 2 people going in front of a judge. Instead of actively engaging in the dialogue, the arbitrator listens carefully to both sides, Each side has a chance to state their complaints in detail. Then, once all of the information has been presented, the arbitrator makes a final decision. What's particularly useful about arbitration is that the two parties must accept the arbitrator's decision, regardless of whether they agree with it or not. Therefore, even though everyone might not be happy about the final result, well, this is one of the major advantages of arbitration. It always guarantees that a resolution will be reached.
Using the points and examples from the talk, describe 2 ways a third party can help resolve conflicts.
You may begin to prepare your response after the beep. Please begin speaking after the beep.